Hey guys, tonight we're heading into a place where the wind never stops blowing. The whiskey burns like acid, and the roads are made of jagged rocks and broken promises. You're stepping off a creaky stagecoach, boots hitting the dust of a nowhere town with a population that shifts every time the wind changes. There's a saloon to your left, a jail with no door to your right, and a lot of people staring like they've already decided where to dig your grave. This is the Wild West, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel it first in your chest. The dry air, so thin and dusty it feels like you're inhaling powdered brick. The sun's already setting, casting long slashes of orange across cracked storefronts and sagging porches. You shuffle forward, unsure if it's safer to keep your head up or down. Eye contact could be a death sentence here, or worse, an invitation. You're not in Disneyland's Frontierland anymore. This is 1874, maybe New Mexico territory or somewhere near Deadwood. Honestly, the borders change so fast even the locals can't agree. The train just started reaching out this far, but you didn't come by train. Oh no, you arrived the hard way. Weeks of bone-rattling carriage rides, horses that kept dying or limping away in the night, and food that might have been jerky or just old leather. Your back aches, your lips are cracked, your boots are too new. Everyone knows you don't belong. You're not even off the main street before someone calls you greenhorn. It's not a term of endearment. The town smells like horses, smoke, and something rotting. Could be garbage, could be a body. The wooden buildings lean like tired old men, and a few have bullet holes in their signs. You try not to look, but you can't help noticing the sign above the general store has the word store misspelled. A lot of people around here can't read, but they all know how to shoot. And that's not even your biggest problem. Your boots? Brand new. Too clean. Too loud. Every step you take sounds like an invitation to trouble. And that coat? Way too dark. Too heavy for this heat. You're sweating like a stuck pig. And that's not just from the sun. It's the stairs. One cowboy, leaning on a hitching post, tips his hat up just enough to let you see the scar running across his left eye. He doesn't smile, doesn't blink, just watches. And beside him, a kid, can't be older than 12, holding a shotgun like it's a baby doll. You're realizing something right now, something that's hitting your chest like the butt of a rifle. You're completely unprepared. Let's talk food. You're hungry? But good luck finding anything edible. The town has one saloon, one eating house, and neither has passed anything resembling a health inspection, mostly because those don't exist yet. You open the door to the saloon and are greeted by smoke, shouting, and piano music that somehow manages to sound both off-key and drunk. You ask for a menu. Everyone laughs. You end up with a tin plate of mystery stew, beans, a lump of salt pork, and something that crunches when you bite it but definitely wasn't meant to. You'll be sick by morning, assuming you make it to morning. Someone bumps into you as you leave. You apologize. Big mistake. A man with a face like a weathered saddle growls, "You calling me clumsy?" You say no, of course not. You were just... He punches you. Now you're bleeding. But it's the West, so you don't call the sheriff. He saw it, probably laughed. Justice here isn't about fairness. It's about who has more friends, more bullets, or fewer teeth. Here's a historical fact to chew on. In most frontier towns, murder rates were shockingly high, not because everyone was a killer, but because there just wasn't any infrastructure to stop them. A lot of towns didn't have real law enforcement. Some had town marshals, who were often former criminals themselves. Others had vigilante committees, basically angry neighbors with guns and rope. Historians still argue whether the Wild West was as lawless as movies suggest, or if the chaos has been exaggerated. But either way, you're not ready. There's a saying in these parts: God created man, but Sam Colt made them equal. If you don't know what that means, you're already dead. You try to find a place to sleep. The hotel is just an upstairs room over the saloon with walls so thin you can hear someone snoring 3 doors down and arguing with a ghost. Or maybe it's a drunk. Either way, the bed smells like mildew and fear, and you can't stop scratching. Fun fringe fact: lice were practically a frontier companion. People had special combs for them, and beds were rarely cleaned, just shaken out. If you're lucky, you'll wake up with bites. If you're unlucky, well, ever heard of typhus? You try to sleep, but can't. The sounds outside are constant. Boots on boards, a woman crying, laughter that doesn't sound friendly, and then gunfire. Just 2 pops, and then silence. No one checks it out. Because out here, gunshots are just part of the weather. By morning, you're dehydrated, half-conscious, and starving again. You stagger outside only to find a horse has dropped something unholy near the water pump. And guess what? That's your drinking water. There's no plumbing, no filters, just hope and grit, and a lot of people who think boiling water is a waste of firewood. You can't Google nearest hospital. There isn't one. Stub your toe here, and you might just die of tetanus. There's no coffee. There's no Advil. There's no mercy. And remember that guy who punched you yesterday? He's out there, somewhere, watching. You made eye contact again. That might be enough. The frontier didn't run on law. It ran on ego. Now you might be thinking, well, I'll just leave. Sure, walk. The next town is 80 miles away. If the sun doesn't kill you, the snakes will, or the coyotes, or just your own bad luck. People didn't survive the West because they were smart. They survived because they were tougher than their boots and twice as mean. You? You've got blisters. You're scared. And now you have diarrhea, probably from that stew. There's one old woman watching you from a porch. Her face is leathered, her eyes are sharp, and she's whittling a stick into something vaguely threatening. She nods once, not in welcome, in pity. You won't make it. You won't last the week. And in the Wild West, that's just a Tuesday. Your first mistake, well, one of many, is what you're wearing. You thought you'd blend in with the classics, didn't you? Wide-brimmed cowboy hat, a big old belt buckle, crisp leather boots, and maybe a long duster coat for drama. You probably even imagined spurs jingling with each heroic step. But out here, your costume isn't just wrong. It's dangerous. That hat? It's too stiff and too clean. Real cowboys wore hats battered by years of storms and dust, shaped by wind and sweat, not by a Hollywood wardrobe department. The wide brim helped, sure. It blocked sun, rain, even dust. But yours looks like it's never seen a day of real work. People notice, And that duster coat you thought was so cool, it's heavy, hot. You're already drenched in sweat before the sun's even climbed over the clapboard rooftops. Out here, layering up like you're starring in a spaghetti western, is a shortcut to dehydration. The boots are the real killer, though. They're stiff. You bought them new. Rookie mistake. Real cowhands breaking their boots over weeks, months even. Yours feel like you're wearing bricks lined with barbed wire. After an hour of walking, just an hour, you've got blisters the size of silver dollars. You limp. And that limp, it tells everyone you're soft. Out west, softness is blood in the water. Let's talk undergarments, since we're in too deep not to. You're probably wearing cotton. Fine, but not great. Back then, wool was king, even in the summer. Why? Because wool breathes, resists odors, and holds up in the face of, well, everything. The downside? It's itchy. Real itchy. And guess what? Underwear was rarely changed. People wore the same underclothes for weeks, sometimes months. Quirky historical fact: some cowboys sewed their long johns shut for winter and wouldn't open them until spring. You heard that right. One giant, itchy, stinky, stitched-up layer of survival. You, on the other hand, you packed 3 pairs of boxer briefs and are already eyeing a laundry tub behind the saloon like it's a 5-star spa. But let's say you smarten up. Ditch the coat, roll up your sleeves, even darken your hat with some dust and spit. Doesn't matter. You're still a walking target. Why? Because your clothes are too clean? No self-respecting cowboy, farmer, or drifter looks freshly laundered. If you do, you're either a tenderfoot with money to steal or a preacher. And neither of those are winning roles out here. Someone whistles behind you. You turn. It's a group of locals watching you from a bench out front of the jail, or what passes for one. It's just a barred window and a rusty sign. The biggest of the bunch tilts his head. You looking for a funeral, son? He's not smiling. You keep walking, heart pounding. You're not here for trouble, right? You're here to experience the Old West. Maybe take in the sights. Maybe learn to ride a horse or pan for gold. Let's talk about horses. You find the stables run by a wiry man named Elmer, whose beard contains more secrets than a locked diary. You ask to rent a horse. He laughs so hard he nearly swallows his chew. Rent a horse? He wheezes. You got any idea how to saddle one? You know what a cinch is? You know how not to get kicked? You don't, of course not. Elmer sighs, eyes you up, then mutters, "Fine, I got a mule that might tolerate you." You're insulted, but you shouldn't be. Mules are smarter than horses and less likely to bolt when you do something stupid, which you will, constantly. He hands you a saddle that weighs more than your backpack back home. Then he watches you struggle. 10 minutes in, your shirt's soaked again, and you've almost dropped it twice. Historians still argue whether the average cowboy could saddle up in under a minute, Elmer says dryly. But I reckon you'll beat the record for longest attempt without dying. Finally, with Elmer's pitying help, you're on the mule. It lurches, you yelp, and instantly every muscle in your legs starts protesting. You thought horseback riding was like in the movies, majestic, breezy, romantic. No, it's bouncy, it's loud, and everything hurts. You last 20 minutes before begging to get off. Your thighs feel like they've been beaten with shovels, and your tailbone is planning to file a complaint. Here's something no one tells you. You have to ride standing in the stirrups half the time to avoid bruising parts of your anatomy that shall remain nameless. And since you don't know that, your body is officially declaring mutiny. Your clothes are soaked, your skin is sunburnt in weird places, and your boots now feel like meat grinders. Still, you think, maybe if I buy some new gear, I'll fit in better. So, you visit the general store. A woman behind the counter gives you a smile that somehow manages to be both polite and pitying. You ask for some clothes that'll help you blend in. She raises an eyebrow. Blend in where, sugar? The Undertaker's? She hands you a wide sash, a worn shirt, and a hat with one side pinned up. You look at yourself in a cracked mirror and realize you're dressed like a vaquero now. Because guess what? The real cowboy style came from Mexico. The earliest cattle drivers in the West weren't Americans. They were Mexican vaqueros, and their look was way cooler and more practical than anything from a Western flick. Fancy embroidery? Functional. Big hats? Necessary. Spurs? Ornate but deadly. Those long, colorful bandanas? They weren't fashion. They were air filters, dust masks, even slings for busted arms. But you're wearing it wrong. Even when you try, you just can't pull it off. An old man on the porch shouts, "Costume parties next door." Everyone laughs. It hits you again. You're a joke here. And out west, a joke doesn't get a second punchline. Night falls again. This time, it's colder. You didn't pack for cold. You thought the desert was always hot. Rookie move. The temperature drops like a hammer, and your thin cotton shirt offers all the protection of a wet tissue. You shiver. You wrap yourself in a scratchy blanket you borrowed from the boarding house. It smells like mildew and pipe smoke. Better than nothing. You think about what it'd be like to just go back. Back to air conditioning and clean socks. Back to soft pants and grocery stores with pre-washed lettuce. But you can't. Not yet. You're stuck in the West for a while longer. And by now, you're starting to realize the biggest truth of all. You're not a cowboy. You're not a pioneer. You're a tourist in a very angry, very dusty time machine. Your clothes are wrong. Your shoes are wrong. Your attitude is wrong. And if you don't figure it out fast, your funeral will be held on the edge of town, probably with your name spelled wrong on a wood plank. Your stomach starts growling before the sun's even cleared the rooftops, and you realize something terrible. There's no diner, no breakfast buffet, no coffee shop with overpriced muffins and almond milk lattes. Welcome to mealtime in the Wild West. You're about to learn the hard way that eating out here isn't just a matter of taste. It's a survival test. And unfortunately, your modern stomach, it didn't train for this. The closest thing you'll get to a menu is a one-word mutter from the cook. Beans. You wander over to the eating house, a dark, smoky room with sawdust on the floor to soak up spills, blood, and probably the occasional tooth. The smell inside is a complex mix of lard, scorched meat, and old socks. The cook is a woman who looks like she could wrestle a bear. She eyes you, snorts, and slaps a dented tin plate in front of you. On it, a grayish slab of what might once have been pork. 3 spoonfuls of beans so overcooked they're practically paste. And something green and wilted you don't want to ask about. No utensils, no napkin, just hope. You poke at it, trying not to gag. The beans taste like smoke and ashes. The meat is chewy, salty, and might be squirrel. The greens, sour, slimy, possibly moving. Fun fringe fact, frontier beans were often soaked in river water and cooked for hours with salt pork or fatback which meant everything tasted like bacon and smoke, and yet still managed to give people indigestion. Fancy seasoning? Not a thing. If you were lucky, you got a dash of vinegar. If not, you hoped it was too hot to notice. You shovel it in. You're starving. Your stomach protests halfway through. You excuse yourself and sprint outside just in time. Your digestive system, spoiled by probiotics, filtered water, and microwavable meals, just isn't built for this. You spend the next hour doubled over behind a barn, negotiating with God and promising never to eat again. You want to drink something, but you remember the water pump from earlier. It's still surrounded by flies. And that milky bucket on the bar? Not milk. It's White Lightning, homemade whiskey, clear, sharp, and guaranteed to peel paint off a barn. You take a sip. It tastes like angry fire and kerosene. Your eyes water. Your chest tightens. Someone pats your back, laughing. First time, you nod, eyes watering. Yeah, we call that gut killer. Cleans you out real nice. No kidding. You collapse into a chair on the porch, stomach churning, mouth dry. A cowboy next to you offers a plug of chewing tobacco. You decline. He shrugs and spits a thick brown stream into the dirt. It hisses like acid. You're starting to miss kombucha. Let's talk supplies. Food out here is limited unless you're hunting or growing your own. Towns get occasional shipments. If the roads aren't blocked, bandits haven't struck, or the driver hasn't drunk his cargo. You might get flour, beans, coffee if you're lucky, maybe jerky, not beef jerky like you know it. Think, strips of meat dried on a line, blackened by smoke, and tougher than the sole of your boot. Historians still argue whether the average frontier diet was more harmful from its lack of nutrients or its sheer monotony. Either way, you're in for a rough ride. In a pinch, folks ate hardtack, flour, water, maybe salt, baked into bricks that could shatter teeth. They'd soak it in coffee or stew just to make it chewable. You try one from the general store. It tastes like drywall. Your jaw gets tired. Your soul weeps. You ask someone, "What about fruit? Vegetables?" They laugh again. Unless you're near a farm or a trading post, you're not getting any. And even then, vegetables come shriveled, canned, or suspiciously fermented. Canned peaches are a delicacy. You kill for one. Speaking of which, it's time to visit the butcher. Big mistake. You step into a lean-to shack filled with flies, heat, and the smell of fresh death. Carcasses hang from the rafters. A man in a blood-soaked apron is hacking something with an axe. He waves. One eye's milky, the other doesn't blink. He offers you a sliver of something raw. You decline, politely. He shrugs, pops it into his mouth, chews, slowly. "Mountain lion," he says. You throw up in your mouth a little. Quirky reality check. Frontier folk ate whatever didn't eat them first. Squirrel, rabbit, prairie dog, rattlesnake, lizard, raccoon, even horse if it came to it. And they didn't waste anything. Brain, liver, heart. Into the stew it went. You? You're barely keeping down crackers. You buy a biscuit from a street vendor. It's dry, dense, and tastes faintly of ash. You ask what's in it. He says, 3-day-old bacon drippings, lard, and prayer. Sounds about right. By evening, you're dizzy. You need salt, sugar, hydration, anything. You stumble into the saloon and beg for coffee. What you get is thick, bitter sludge that tastes like someone boiled socks and added soot for flavor. It does the trick. Barely. Fun fact, Cowboys often reused coffee grounds up to 5 times. If it was dark and hot, it passed. Sometimes they'd add chicory or burnt beans to stretch it. What you're drinking might have been made last week. You think about the food at home. Hot showers, fresh fruit, sushi. You remember cold cereal, microwaved leftovers, that one fancy meal from your birthday. Your stomach weeps silently. You offer it another bite of beans. It rebels immediately. You end up face first in the horse trough. Someone takes pity on you. A little girl offers you a piece of hard candy unwrapped from a dusty apron pocket. You thank her, pop it in your mouth. It's root beer flavored, and it's the best thing you've tasted in 36 hours. She smiles. Mama says only folks who survive 3 meals get candy. You nod, chewing slowly. It tastes like mercy. A passing preacher stops, offers a boiled egg from his pocket. You take it. You eat it. It's overcooked and has a green ring around the yolk. But you don't care. Blessed are the hungry, he says. You believe him. You try cooking your own food the next morning. Over a fire you somehow manage to start after 3 failed attempts and mild smoke inhalation. You burn the beans. Again. You eat them anyway. You survive. Barely. You're beginning to understand something deep, primal, and humbling. Out here, eating is work. Food isn't pleasure, it's maintenance. Flavor, rare, safety, optional. And you? You're still losing weight, even though your pants are already too tight from the humidity. The local kids start calling you the pale one, not because of your skin, but because you've spent so much time crouched near outhouses and leaning over fences that you've lost all color. You managed to find a fig. It tastes like hope. It's gone in one bite. Later that day, someone hands you a fried ball of something. You don't ask. You eat it. It's crunchy, greasy, and not entirely unpleasant. What was that? You ask. He grins. Prairie oyster. You pause. What's prairie oyster? He doesn't answer, just winks. And you decide you don't want to know. You trip over a loose stone, walking down Main Street, and feel a sharp jab in your toe. At first, you laugh it off. Just a stubbed toe, right? Shake it off, cowboy. But by nightfall, it's throbbing. By the next morning, your whole foot is swollen. The red streak creeping up your leg? Yeah, that's not normal. And it's definitely not good. Congratulations! You're now facing your first real brush with 19th century medicine. And if you thought the food was rough, wait until someone tries to treat you with a hacksaw and a jug of whiskey. Let's set the scene. You limp your way to the town doctor, and by doctor, we mean a man named Horace, who once worked as a barber and now also pulls teeth, sets bones, and occasionally dabbles in amputations. His office? A back room behind the saloon, one window, one creaky cot, one cabinet full of bottles with peeling labels and unidentifiable liquids, and one chair with suspicious brown stains. Horace sees your foot, grunts, and reaches for a knife. No gloves, no antiseptic, no sterilized tools. Your eyes widen. You don't have any, antibiotics? You ask, hopefully. He blinks. Anti-what? You're in trouble. Mainstream historical fact. The germ theory of disease didn't go mainstream in the U.S. until the late 1800s, and antiseptic surgical practice, like hand washing or sterilizing tools, wasn't common on the frontier. Doctors might rinse their hands in whiskey, wipe a blade on their coat, and dive in. That red streak on your leg, that's infection, possibly blood poisoning, possibly tetanus, There's no penicillin, no urgent care, just pain, prayer, and possibly a hot knife. Horace mutters, "If it gets worse, I'll take the toe, maybe the foot." You want a second opinion. He nods toward the town blacksmith. You can ask Silas. He's pulled teeth in a pinch. This is real life in the Wild West. Fringe tidbit. Some people preferred to see the town midwife or a traveling granny woman over actual doctors. These women used herbal remedies, poultices, and folk cures passed down through generations. Some worked, some didn't. But hey, at least they didn't start every treatment with, "Hold still while I heat the blade." You limp away, deciding you'd rather risk the infection. And it's not just you. Disease is everywhere. Dysentery, typhoid, smallpox, tuberculosis, you name it. Poor sanitation, bad water, close quarters. It's a perfect storm. One bad cough in the saloon can turn into a full-blown epidemic. And guess what? Nobody's masking up. You duck into the general store hoping for bandages. The clerk offers you a jar of goose fat and a strip of linen. You rub the fat on, then wrap it up. That's what I do for my boils. Lovely. You ask if there's a doctor in the next town over. He shrugs. There's someone with a saw. She's good. Real steady hands. You don't ask what she saws. By midday, your stomach's cramping again. Could be the beans. Could be that sip of pump water you took while delirious. You find yourself hunched behind a hay bale again. Your body is not adjusting. Open scholarly debate. Some researchers argue that people back then had stronger gut flora due to constant exposure to bacteria and unprocessed foods. Others say they just died more often and younger, so the week didn't last long enough to complain. Either way, your modern gut is waving a white flag. Later, you see a man carried out of the saloon, bleeding from the shoulder. He took a bullet in a poker game. No one rushes, no ambulance, just two buddies with whiskey bottles and a rope to bite down on. They carry him to Horace. You follow. Part curiosity, part horror. Horace lays the man on the creaky table, pulls out a long needle, and starts sewing. No anesthesia, just a fifth of bourbon and some mumbled cursing. The man passes out from the pain. Horace shrugs. Easier that way. You nearly faint yourself. And don't think childbirth is any better. You meet a woman named Clara who has 6 kids and 0 teeth. She tells you stories of giving birth on dirt floors during storms while boiling water for stew. No epidurals, no doctors. Sometimes not even another adult around. Just grit. You ask what she did for the pain. She says, bit down on a stick, screamed into a towel, named the baby after the day it didn't kill me. You laugh nervously. She doesn't. And dental care, you're not ready. You feel a toothache start. Probably from that suspicious candy or maybe the pint of fried fat you gnawed on out of desperation. You ask around. The answer? Whiskey and pliers. You find the barber surgeon who moonlights as a tooth yanker. He shows you his tools, iron tongs, a belt for strapping you down, and a rag for your mouth. No numbing, just grit and gravity. You decline. He shrugs. Suit yourself. You'll be back. Everyone comes back when the rot sets in. You sleep badly that night, afraid to roll over and disturb your sore toe. You dream of scalpels and blood-stained aprons, of leeches and poultices made from pine resin and rabbit poop. Yes, rabbit poop. It was a real thing. You wake up sweating. You limp to the outhouse, your new best friend, and sit in silence, wondering if your body will ever trust you again. Later that day, a boy gets bit by a snake. Everyone gathers around. No one panics. A man slits the bite open and tries to suck out the venom. You gasp. Another shakes his head. Doesn't work, you know. Yeah, but it makes him feel like he's helping. The boy survives. Barely. His leg swells to twice its size, and someone offers to ice it with cold bacon fat. You sit quietly and wonder if modern life has made you too soft, or if maybe, just maybe, this world was never meant to be survived by anyone long term. A wagon rolls into town that night, its driver coughing blood into a rag. People avoid him. You ask why. Consumption, someone whispers. You step back. Tuberculosis, the real killer of the West. Spread through spit, coughs, shared cups. No cure. Just slow wasting, bleeding lungs and quiet deaths in back rooms. One saloon girl tells you she's seen 5 men die from it in a single season. She shows you a locket filled with ashes. That's my brother, she says softly. We couldn't afford a coffin. You don't ask questions after that. You pass a sign on the outskirts of town the next day. It reads, Plague House, keep out. You don't go in. You don't ask. You just keep walking. It occurs to you, not for the first time, that you were never meant to survive here. Not with your toothpaste and vitamins. Not with your soft skin and city lungs. Out here, pain is a daily companion. Medicine is luck and whiskey, and survival, that's not promised. That's earned. One wound, one fever, one sleepless, shivering night at a time. It's dawn again, and your whole body aches. Your muscles scream when you try to stand, and your knees audibly protest with a crackle that sounds like crumpling paper. You hobble outside, squinting against the sunrise like a hungover vampire, only to be greeted by a man already saddled, already riding off into the horizon. He's been awake since before you even stopped dreaming of indoor plumbing. That's the reality of being a cowhand. No rest, no comfort, and certainly no brunch. Because in the Wild West, if you thought you were going to be the cool cowboy riding into town, charming the locals and tipping your hat while chewing a piece of straw, think again. That version of the cowboy, pure Hollywood. The real cowboys, they work, they suffer, they sleep on dirt, and you, my friend, wouldn't survive a single day doing what they do. Let's begin with the hours. You've never woken up this early in your life, and certainly not to saddle a horse by moonlight and ride for 16 straight hours. That's the norm during cattle drives. They start at 4:00 a.m., ride through blazing sun and biting wind, and don't stop until the cattle settle for the night. There's no lunch break, no shade, just saddle sores, dust storms, and the ever-present stench of cow poop. Mainstream historical fact. Cattle drives could stretch for up to 3 months, covering hundreds of miles. Cowboys slept on the ground, ate whatever was boiled in the chuck wagon pot, and were often paid less than $1 a day. You, by contrast, are now on your second day, and you've already iced your thighs twice using river water and desperation. Your hands are blistered from trying to hold the reins. Your lower back is locked in a semi-permanent curve, and you're sunburned in places that have never before seen light. You apply a balm that smells like pine tar and crushed regret. It doesn't help. The trail boss shouts for you to move a stray steer. You ride toward it, but your mule has other ideas. It stops, just stops, and glares at you like Nope. A teenager rides past, lassos the steer, and tips their hat. Better luck next time, city boy. You feel shame. Deep, aching, bone-level shame. You try to rally by helping set up the campfire. You gather wood. You stack rocks. You light the match. Too many matches. And finally get a sputtering flame. Then the wind shifts. Poof! Gone. The cook sighs. Sit down before you burn your eyebrows off. You sit. Fringe tidbit. Trail cooks were often the most respected and feared members of the crew. Cross them, and you'd find mysterious chunks in your beans. Praise them, and they might give you an extra biscuit or the last scoop of lard. Speaking of which, dinner tonight is son-of-a-gun stew, a bubbling pot of organs, onions, and hooves. You don't ask, you just eat. By the firelight, you watch the others. They stretch out in their blankets, boots still on, hats pulled low. They talk about stampedes, rattlesnakes, and that one time the boss lost a toe to frostbite but kept working. They're made of iron and hide. You're made of granola bars and Wi-Fi. They wake you in the middle of the night for night herding. It's your turn. You protest. I barely slept. The boss growls, welcome to cowboying. So you stand, bleary-eyed, watching 1,000 cows chew and moo and occasionally try to bolt. Your job? Keep them calm. Ride slowly. Sing if you can. Yes, singing. Cowboys often sang at night to soothe the herd. Songs like Red River Valley, Get Along, Little Doggies, or whatever you can hum without choking on dust. You try to sing. Your voice cracks. A steer side-eyes you. Then thunder. A storm rolls in fast. Because, of course, it does. Rain soaks you in seconds. Lightning flashes. The cattle spook. And now you're yelling, kicking your mount, circling back and forth to keep them from stampeding into the river. Your heart races. You lose control of your mule. You fall, face first into the mud. You lie there, blinking up at the sky, contemplating your choices. You wanted the cowboy life. You got it. And now your mouth is full of dirt and possibly manure. Someone rides past, rope in hand. Get up, partner. Cows ain't gonna calm themselves. You get up. You finish your shift soaked, shivering, and silently sobbing. In the morning, they laugh about it. You don't. The trail continues. You ride, you ache, you sleep, you wake. Repeat. One morning, you ask if anyone's seen a mirror. They all laugh. Cowboys didn't carry mirrors. Not because they didn't care about appearances, but because they didn't have time or room for vanity. Shaving? Rare. Bathing? Even rarer. A dip in the river was a luxury and a risk because of snakes, strong currents, and, well, modesty issues. You haven't seen your own reflection in 4 days. You suspect it would scare you. You try to write in a journal, but your hands are too blistered. Your back is too sore, and your mule may be plotting your death. You fantasize about running away to a nice general store and hiding in a barrel of pickles until someone invents air conditioning. But then, something strange happens. You start to get stronger. Your legs, though sore, stop shaking. Your grip gets steadier. You manage to toss a rope in the right direction without tangling yourself in it. You drink coffee without gagging. You eat beans without crying. You ride your mule, and it tolerates you. Barely. The cowboys nod at you once, slightly. It's not friendship, not yet. But it's not mockery either. You fall asleep one night under the stars, wrapped in a wool blanket that smells like sweat and ash, and you realize you survived another day. Not gracefully, Not cleanly, but you made it. And you finally understand something vital. Cowboys weren't heroes because they fought bad guys or wore cool hats. They were heroes because they got up every day, rode out into the wilderness, braved hunger, weather, and exhaustion, and kept going. You're no hero, but you're trying. And maybe that's enough to make it through tomorrow. You're awakened by shouting, muffled, urgent, and too close for comfort. Someone's yelling, "Indians!" And you jolt upright, heart hammering, mind blank. And just like that, you've entered one of the most misunderstood, mythologized, and controversial corners of the Old West, Native American relations. And guess what? Everything you think you know is probably wrong, or at least wildly oversimplified. You're still groggy as you stumble out from your blanket, half expecting feathers, war whoops, and painted horses to come storming over the hill. Nothing. Turns out the shouting was a false alarm. A coyote spooked the herd. Still, the tension lingers. The other cowhands murmur, joke nervously, spit into the dust. One mutters about savages. Another tells a story of a cousin who went missing out on the plains. You're left wondering, what's true? What's legend? What's been twisted beyond recognition by dime novels and grainy black and white films? Let's unravel this, one uncomfortable thread at a time. Mainstream historical fact. The American West wasn't just cowboys versus Indians. It was a complex, brutal, often tragic story of land seizure, forced relocation, cultural erasure, and yes, occasional violence from all sides. The West was home to dozens of indigenous nations, each with distinct languages, traditions, and territories. Apache, Lakota, Comanche, Cheyenne, Nez Perce, Navajo, and many others. They weren't a monolith, and their relationships with settlers ranged from cooperative trade to open warfare. You're a newcomer, an outsider, and whether or not you realize it, you're walking on land that was taken often by broken treaties and military force. It's not something anyone here talks about, but you feel it in the silence, in the glances, in the invisible lines crisscrossing this landscape. You ask a ranch hand, an older man with tobacco-stained teeth, if he's ever encountered any tribes. He nods slowly. Once, Apache. Just watched us from a ridge. Didn't move, didn't threaten, just watched. Were you scared? You ask. He spits, terrified. Then he adds, but not 'cause they were monsters, 'cause I knew we didn't belong there. That land's heavy. Fringe tidbit. Some white settlers were adopted by indigenous tribes, either after being captured or by choice, and chose to stay. A few even fought against the U.S. government when the Army tried to drive their adopted people from their lands. Those stories rarely made it into the history books. Later that day, you meet a trader coming up from the south. He's got a wagon full of hand-woven baskets, dried herbs, turquoise jewelry, and blankets dyed in brilliant reds and purples. You ask where he got them. Zuni Pueblo, he says. Fair trade. He explains how many of the local tribes were skilled artisans, farmers, and traders long before Europeans arrived. They had vast trade routes, agricultural systems, and social networks. Your image of teepees and feathered war bonnets? That's just a sliver of the story, mostly from the Plains tribes. And the popular trope of scalping? Yeah, let's talk about that. Historians still argue whether widespread scalping was more a native or colonial practice. What's known is that European colonists actually paid bounties for native scalps. and in some cases, vice versa. It was a brutal, dehumanizing practice that's been exaggerated, repackaged, and sensationalized for centuries. You're quiet for a while after that. The next day, your cattle drive skirts near what you're told is Indian territory. There's no sign of anyone, but everyone rides quieter. Eyes scan the horizon. Rifles stay a little closer to hand. And you start to feel the weight of the frontier's true tension, not just man versus nature, but cultures colliding, coexisting, and often clashing under the unbearable pressure of expansion. That night, an older cowhand named Elijah sits beside you at the fire. He's soft-spoken, wiry, and missing half a finger. "You know," he says, sipping coffee, "my ma was Choctaw, grew up on a farm, married my pa, he was white. Folks didn't talk about it much, safer that way." You glance at him. "You ever meet her people?" you ask. He nods. "Used to, before the relocations, before the soldiers came." He doesn't say more. He doesn't need to. You look out over the prairie, the wind moving the grass like ocean waves, and wonder what was here before the barbed wire, the railroads, the guns. Another cowboy joins the fire, cracking open a book. You blink. "You read?" you ask, surprised. He chuckles. "Sure. Ever read Ramona?" You haven't. It's about a half-native girl. California. Sad story. Love, land, loss, all that. More truth in it than folks want to admit. He tosses the book onto his saddle. They're not villains, you know, just people trying to live. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. You came here expecting good guys and bad guys, clear sides, clear morals. But the West isn't black and white. It's dust and blood, sunlight and shadow, survival and sorrow. And the tribes who lived here first, they're not just background color in someone else's adventure. They are the story, whether the books say so or not. Before bed, you find yourself staring at the stars. You remember someone saying the Lakota believed the Milky Way was the path of spirits, the sacred trail to the afterlife. You hope that somewhere in this tangled, thorny landscape of history, there's a path forward that leads to truth, to healing, to something better than what came before. But for now, you sleep. You're not ready to rewrite the past. You're still just trying to survive it. The first bullet doesn't come with a bang. It comes with a crack, a sharp, almost lazy pop from somewhere beyond the ridge, then another. And suddenly, you're no longer on a cattle drive. You're in a gunfight, or at least adjacent to one. No, it's not the high noon stare-down showdown of the movies. No revolving camera angles, no dramatic music. It's chaos, screaming, dust, horses bolting, someone yelling, "Cover!" and someone else bleeding into the dust. And you're frozen. Because this is not pretend. This is not cinematic. This is what happens when desperate men with guns outnumber good sense. Welcome to violence in the Old West, where justice is mostly a matter of luck, location, and who's willing to shoot first. Mainstream historical fact. The Wild West wasn't as constantly violent as movies suggest. But when violence did erupt, it was sudden, brutal, and often permanent. Gunfights were usually fast, messy affairs, not slow-draw duels. You dive behind a wagon, heart pounding, wondering who's shooting at whom and why. You have no idea. Nobody does. It could be cattle rustlers. Could be a feud. Could be a gambling debt gone sideways. Could be just Tuesday. You peek out, and a stray bullet snaps past your ear. You hit the ground again. "Keep your head down," someone yells. You oblige. A cowboy fires twice over your head, then ducks. Welcome to the real West, Greenhorn. Eventually, the shooting stops. A few men lie motionless. A few groan. One shouts obscenities. You stay perfectly still, like maybe the earth will forget you're here. And when the dust finally settles, the dead are carried off, the wounded stitched or whiskeyed, and the rest, they saddle up and keep moving, because there's no pause button out here, no trauma counseling, just dirt and blood and motion. That night, around the fire, no one talks about it. No grand speeches, no revenge vows, just silence and beans. Always beans. You ask someone, why'd they shoot? He shrugs. Does it matter? Apparently not. The town you roll into the next day has gallows right at the entrance. A statement. The sheriff, a squat, tobacco-spitting man with a shotgun and an attitude, eyes you suspiciously. "You carrying?" he asks. You shake your head. "Then you're already dead," he grunts. "Get yourself a piece." You stammer something about not knowing how to shoot. He laughs. "Then you better learn how to run." Fringe tidbit. Many frontier towns required you to check your weapons upon entering. Literally turn them over to the sheriff. Dodge City had such laws, but enforcement was inconsistent, and violence still flared. Guns weren't the only weapons. Knives, clubs, and fists got plenty of use. You do try to learn. A cowboy named Clay offers to teach you the basics, out behind the barn, where the cows won't get startled. You grip the revolver awkwardly, hands sweating. "Not like that," he says, repositioning your grip. You ain't pouring tea. The revolver is heavy, muzzle heavy. Your aim drifts. You fire once, miss wildly. Clay grins. "At least you didn't shoot your foot. That's progress." You practice for an hour, ears ringing, wrists sore. You hit a can once, maybe by accident. And here's the thing. Guns back then weren't precise. Black powder revolvers fouled quickly. Barrels were short, triggers stiff. A real marksman was rare and revered. Historians still argue whether the fastest gun in the West ever truly existed, or whether it was a legend built by pulp writers and bored barkeeps. What's certain? You're not it. The next morning, you see a poster outside the saloon. Wanted, dead or alive. The man's face is drawn roughly, his name scrawled beneath in bold ink. The reward? $100. That's more than you've seen in weeks. Someone nudges you. That's crazy Levi. Robbed a stage, shot a bank teller, ran off with a preacher's daughter. You ask, dead or alive? They really mean that? They nod. Sometimes they prefer dead. Easier to haul. You stare at the poster. You're not a bounty hunter, but someone is. And someone's probably looking at you, wondering what you might be worth, alive or not. Later, a brawl erupts in the saloon over a game of faro. Chairs break, bottles fly. A man loses a tooth. Another loses consciousness. No one intervenes. "Just Saturday," someone mutters, sipping beer. You realize something else. There's no real law here, not like you know it. The sheriff? He's one man, maybe two deputies. He enforces order where he can and looks away where he can't. Justice is local, personal, and deeply inconsistent. A man might get hanged for stealing a horse, but another walks free after killing someone in self-defense. That phrase gets used a lot. You hear it again 2 days later when a land dispute turns bloody. Two neighbors, one fence, one dead. The survivor claims the other drew first. Did he? No one knows. No one investigates. You learn quickly. Out here, your reputation is your shield. Known to be dangerous? People leave you alone. Known to be weak? You're a target. You try to walk tall. You wear your borrowed revolver low. You practice your scowl in the reflection of a rain barrel. It doesn't help. You still scream when a horse sneezes too close to your ear. Someone carves a notch in their rifle. You don't ask. That night, a man is hanged in the square. No trial, no jury, just a judge, a rope, and a tree. You can't watch. Others do. It's hard to sleep after that. You start to understand the paranoia, the twitchiness, the need to sit facing the door in every room. Because the next conflict might not come with a warning. It might start over a spilled drink, a poker game, a sideways glance. You pass two men arguing in the street. Voices rise, hands hover near belts. You freeze. Then, just as quickly, one spits, turns, walks away. No shooting today. You exhale. The guy next to you shrugs. Maybe tomorrow. And the worst part? You start to get used to it. Not comfortable, not safe, just numb. Violence becomes part of the background hum. Like wind, like creaking wood, like coyotes howling in the dark. You carry your pistol now, loaded, unsafe. You know it's dumb. But you also know that out here, being polite won't save you. Only being prepared might. You wonder how long before you forget what it felt like to live without the constant weight of potential violence pressing down on your shoulders. But for now, you holster your fear, tighten your belt, and keep walking, because there's no turning back anymore. And the next bullet might not miss. You're exhausted, sunburned, lightly concussed from a saddle mishap, and still sore from the last time you tried to punch a cactus out of frustration. Note, the cactus won. So when someone casually mentions you've got chores to do before sundown, you think they must be joking. They are not. Because if there's one thing that defines the real life of a Westerner, not the cinematic gunslinger, but the average settler, rancher, or homesteader, it's endless, back-breaking labor. And it turns out you were not built for this. Welcome to the invisible grind of the Old West. No glamour, no shortcuts, no sick days. Just work. Every single day. You start with firewood. Seems easy enough until you realize you're splitting logs with a dull axe that weighs more than your left leg. The handle is worn smooth and slightly splintered. The sun is relentless. The sweat stings your eyes. Your hands develop blisters within minutes, and your aim gets worse with every swing. You hit your shin once, just once. You scream a word that would make your mother wince. A nearby cow looks offended. Mainstream historical fact. Life on the frontier demanded constant physical labor, regardless of gender. Chores like chopping wood, carrying water, tending livestock, and preserving food were daily and non-negotiable. Settlers burned through hundreds of calories just keeping their homesteads livable. You drag your aching body toward the well. You're handed 2 heavy buckets and told to fill 'em or die thirsty. The well crank is rusty and loud. The bucket resists like it's full of lead. You finally haul one up, only to realize the water is warm and smells faintly like metal and disappointment. You carry both buckets back, arms shaking, biceps burning, wondering how people did this daily and still managed to smile in their family portraits. Spoiler, they didn't. That's why no one smiled. Then there's laundry. You expect a washboard and a few suds. You get a kettle of boiling water, a bar of lye soap, and a stern woman named Ruth who shows no mercy. She scrubs until her knuckles bleed. You scrub until you start crying. Ruth sighs and tells you to start over. You do. Slowly. After that, livestock. The pigs are mean. The chickens are worse. You get pecked, chased, and poop splattered all before breakfast. And no, you don't get a break after breakfast. There's fencing to repair, roof leaks to patch, traps to check, vermin to kill, horses to brush, stalls to shovel, outhouses to scrape. Yes, scrape. You ask Ruth, is there ever a day off? She snorts, sure, the day you die. Comforting. You try to milk a cow next. How hard could it be? Turns out, very. You sit on the stool, try to grip the teats, and squeeze gently. Nothing. The cow shifts. You squeeze harder. She kicks hard. You hit the dirt. The cow stares at you with utter disdain. A boy, maybe 8 years old, steps in and finishes the job in 30 seconds. City hands, he mutters, shaking his head. You start to feel like a guest star in your own life. Fringe tidbit. Many Westerners recycled everything. Flour sacks became dresses. Tin cans became toys. Bacon grease was used for cooking, cleaning, even healing. Nothing was wasted. Not because it was trendy, but because survival demanded it. By midday, your shirt is soaked, your arms don't work properly, and you're fairly certain you have dirt in your lungs. Ruth hands you a jar of buttermilk. It tastes like sour sadness, but you drink it anyway. There's no afternoon rest out here, just more chores. You help build a fence. You carry rocks. You hammer until your palm swells. You lose 3 nails and 1 sense of self-worth. You try to start a fire to cook dinner and fail. Ruth relights it with a single spark and a glare. Then comes food prep. You pluck a chicken. You cry a little. You stir lard into flour. You slice onions so pungent they make you see visions. You boil coffee thick enough to walk on. You eat in silence, too tired to talk, too hungry to care. Then you wash the dishes with ash, not soap. Why? Because lye is expensive, and your clean dishes don't need to smell nice. They just need to not kill anyone. After dinner, more work. Always more work. You gather eggs. You sweep the dirt floor of the cabin because even dirt floors need maintenance. You oil a wagon wheel. You try to sew a button. You stab your thumb. You mutter, I miss Amazon Prime. No one knows what you're talking about. And here's the kicker. It never ends. Even after all the physical chores, there's the planning, the preparing, the preserving. Everyone's constantly bracing for the next disaster. Drought, frost, illness, locusts, bandits, bears, debt collectors, or sheer bad luck. Historians still argue whether life in frontier settlements shortened lifespans more due to physical hardship or emotional strain. Likely both. Because even if you survived the work, it wore you down from the inside. But here's the strange thing. As the sun sets, painting the fields in gold, you catch a moment. A real moment. Ruth sets a pie on the windowsill. A dog barks somewhere. Kids laugh as they chase fireflies. The air smells of pine smoke and earth. The stars begin to flicker into view. And for a second, the weight lifts. It's not easy. It's not clean. But it's real. This life takes everything from you, yes, but it also gives something in return, a deep, unshakable sense of purpose. You collapse into bed that night, skin scraped, hands cracked, legs jelly, but your mind weirdly feels clear. You earned this exhaustion. You carved it out of the land with your own failing hands. And maybe, just maybe, you start to understand why people stayed. Not because it was easy, not because it was pretty, but because it meant something. You still don't know if you'll last the week. But for now, you sleep like someone who built something, even if it was just a fence, a stew, or a slightly less angry cow. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again, because Ruth says so. You wake up with dirt in your ears, a squirrel investigating your boot, and a mosquito bite the size of a biscuit on your neck. The rooster is already crowing. The sun is already burning through the cracks in the window, and your back feels like you tried to wrestle a piano in your sleep. You roll over, groaning, and remember, today is travel day. If you thought staying put in the Wild West was hard, wait until you try moving through it. You load into a wagon that feels older than time itself. The wheels creak with each breath. The boards groan like an overworked knee. And your seat? A wooden plank wrapped in a horse blanket, angled just perfectly to make sure your spine compresses with every bump. The driver, a leathery man named Amos, slaps the reins. "We'll make 20 miles today if we're lucky." You blink. "Only 20? He spits. "You want faster, get wings." The oxen plod forward, and your journey into Western transportation, hell begins. Mainstream historical fact. Most settlers and travelers moved westward by wagon, horseback, or on foot. Trains were still expanding, and roads, if you could call them that, were little more than rutted trails through mud, dust, and sharp rocks. Average speed? Maybe 2 miles per hour. At that pace, you'll reach the next town sometime after your will to live expires. You try to make yourself comfortable. You fail. The wagon jolts violently every few seconds. Your tailbone begs for mercy. The dust kicks up and coats your teeth. You try to tie a handkerchief around your mouth. It helps, until the sweat makes it stick to your lips like papier-mâché. The heat is suffocating. The shade non-existent. The air tastes like warm pennies and horse breath. And then, of course, it rains. Not a soft, movie magic sprinkle, a deluge. The dirt trail becomes a sticky nightmare. The wagon wheels sink into the muck. Everyone climbs out to push. You slip. You fall. You land directly in the sludge with a splash that sounds both tragic and undignified. Fringe tidbit: pioneers often packed their wagons so tight that they had to walk beside them, not ride in them. Children and elderly might sit inside, but most folks trudged through heat, snow, and ankle-deep mud to save the oxen's energy. Amos grumbles. "Back in '63, we lost a whole wagon in a rut. Just gone. Poof." You stare at the trail. It doesn't look that deep. Then your boot disappears into it. You pull it out, slowly, sadly, shoeless. Someone tosses you a spare boot. Doesn't fit? You wear it anyway. Traveling the West isn't just slow. It's dangerous. Bandits, rattlesnakes, washed-out bridges, and the occasional broken wheel that strands you for hours while someone repairs it with a bit of rope, a nail, and some aggressively wishful thinking. You cross a river. The current is deceptively strong. The oxen hesitate. Amos curses. You hold on to the wagon side, teeth chattering. The water rushes in over your ankles, your knees. You're too late. The wagon tilts. you're in the water. You come up sputtering, drenched, clutching a half loaf of wet bread and what might be someone's boot. Not yours. Your supplies are soaked. The blankets are soggy. The firewood's ruined. The map is now pulp. You dry off by the fire that night, shivering and reeking of river muck. You lost your socks, your dignity, possibly a molar. You try to laugh. No one else does. Historians still argue whether the myth of Western freedom was worth the brutal cost of expansion. For every family that made it to their patch of prairie, another broken axle, lost a child, or vanished entirely into the wild. The next day brings wind, not a breeze, a gale. It pelts you with dust so hard you swear you're being exfoliated by sandpaper. You wrap your face, you squint, you press on. A tumbleweed slams into your chest and nearly knocks you over. You are bested by a plant. Amos laughs for 5 full minutes. Eventually, you reach a way station, a simple outpost with one shack, a watering hole, and a man selling squirrel jerky from a tin bucket. You buy some. It's chewy. Inside the station, travelers swap horror stories. A broken axle in Sioux territory, a wheel lost to quicksand, a snake in someone's bedding, a man who ate soap because he thought it was cheese. You nod solemnly. You understand now. You sleep in the open that night, curled under a tarp that smells faintly of mold and goat. The stars are bright, but the wind howls. You hear wolves. Or maybe it's coyotes. Maybe it's your own stomach. You ask Amos, how much farther to town? He shrugs. Week, maybe 2, if the river don't rise. And you know, deep in your travel-weary soul, that the river will rise. You dream of asphalt, of gas stations, of traffic lights. But you wake to creaky wheels, cranky animals, and the slow, grinding march westward, 1 mile at a time. Because out here, the journey is the punishment, and also the only way forward. You finally see it in the distance, rooftops, fences, a crooked church steeple, and, hallelujah, a saloon sign creaking in the wind. Town! After days of wilderness, wagons, mosquitoes, and regret, it looks like paradise. Civilization, solid floors, walls, chairs with backs. You limp into the town like a war survivor, smelling of wet leather and beef jerky, eyes squinting against the midday glare. But here's the problem. You're not in a movie. No one cheers. No one rushes over to greet you. They just stare. Because you, friend, are clearly not from here. This is no frontier utopia. This is the messy, strange, unpredictable world of Western towns, and you're about to learn just how weird and uncomfortable they can be. You pass the general store. The sign says, dry goods and sundries, which turns out to mean nails, salt, questionable tobacco, 2 bolts of coarse fabric, and something labeled medicinal whiskey in brown glass. You want a toothbrush, you get a stick. Mainstream historical fact. Frontier towns often popped up almost overnight, built around mines, railroads, cattle drives, or trading posts. They were chaotic, temporary, and rarely looked like the polished, grid-lined towns of back east. Mud streets, boardwalks, animals wandering freely, dust coating everything. You make your way to the saloon. It's dim inside, smells like old beer, cigar smoke, and desperation. A piano plays out of tune. A man snoring on a table may or may not be alive. You approach the bar. Whiskey, you say, like you've seen in movies. The barkeep gives you a long look, pours a shot, and says, 10 cents. You dig into your pocket and realize you have one nickel, a button, and a dead fly. The barkeep doesn't blink. You payin' or dancin', you dance. The piano picks up speed. You flail awkwardly. A woman in a feathered hat claps along. You step on a boot, possibly a toe, and someone mutters, "City folks." Eventually, you're allowed to sit. Someone buys you a drink out of pity. It's strong enough to disinfect a bullet wound. You sip it and see your ancestors. Across the room, two men argue over poker. One slams his hand down. The other flips the table. A gun is drawn. But no shots fired. Just curses and posturing. The bartender sighs. Third time this week, you ask where you can find a place to sleep. "Upstairs," he says. "If you don't mind bedbugs, drafty windows, and ghosts." Ghosts? He doesn't elaborate. You check into a room with a slanted floor, a mattress stuffed with horsehair, and wallpaper peeling like sunburnt skin. You love it, because it's not a tent, and the pillow is mostly pillow-shaped. You wander town the next day, learning the layout. There's a blacksmith, hammering iron into shoe shapes that look aggressive. There's a schoolhouse, closed for the summer. There's a church with a cracked bell and a suspiciously grumpy-looking minister. There's also a jail, just one cell, currently occupied by a sleeping man who's either drunk or very relaxed about incarceration. The sheriff sits on a chair out front, chewing a toothpick. "Who's the prisoner?" you ask. He shrugs. "Dave. He'll be out after lunch." No paperwork, no lawyers, just Dave. Fringe tidbit. Many jails in western towns weren't designed to hold people long. Sheriffs often operated with little oversight, and punishments were inconsistent. Jail time was often used to cool down locals after brawls, rather than serve formal justice. You stop into the barber's. He's also the dentist and the undertaker. 3 in 1, he says, grinning with gold teeth. You need anything pulled, filled, or buried. You back away slowly. At the post office, you send a letter. The clerk warns you it might take 2-3 weeks to reach its destination. Assuming it survives bandits, storms, and wild boars, you say a silent prayer for your letter. Later, a traveling salesman rides in, opens a suitcase, and starts shouting about miracle elixirs, guaranteed to cure gout, scurvy, heartbreak, and excessive flatulence. People gather. One man buys 2 bottles. You ask what's in it. The salesman leans close. Mostly sugar. Little bit of turpentine. Turpentine. He nods. It's the kick. You decline. Historians still argue whether Western towns were truly lawless or just selectively lawful. Many towns had rules, some quite strict, but enforcement was often biased. Gambling might be tolerated one day, outlawed the next. Morality was flexible depending on who was in charge. You notice that the wealthier folks stay on the north side of town. The south side has more tents, more dust, more people with missing teeth and visible weapons. Social class is obvious, even here. Especially here. You ask about the local newspaper. The clerk points to a wall plastered in handwritten notices. That's it. Updates every Tuesday, unless the editor's drunk. You read the latest edition. It includes a recipe for squirrel stew, a stern note about indecent behavior at the last church picnic, and an obituary that simply says, "We assume Tom is dead." Fair. That night, you visit the town dance, held in a barn lit with lanterns and optimism. A fiddler plays, people spin, boots stomp, skirts swirl. You join in. You are terrible. But no one minds. You're trying. That's enough. As you stumble outside, dizzy and sweating, a group of teenagers runs past, chasing a pig that apparently escaped from someone's backyard. You sit on a barrel, watching the stars emerge, and realize something. This town may be rough, unpredictable, and half collapsing, but it's alive. It's human. It's messy in the best possible way. And for the first time in days, you feel like maybe, just maybe, you belong here until the sheriff taps your shoulder. You staying long? You nod. Then tomorrow, you're joining the fire brigade. There's a fire brigade? There is now. Welcome to town. You're not even awake yet when the bell starts clanging. Not the church bell, the other bell. The panicked, slightly off-key, deeply terrifying one tied to a pole in front of the general store. You stagger outside, one boot on, shirt backwards, hair in a post-sleep tumbleweed state. A boy runs past you yelling, "Fire!" And just like that, you're not just in the Wild West, you're in the middle of a disaster. Smoke curls up from behind the livery stable, thick and oily. You smell scorched hay and panic. People are shouting, horses are whinnying, buckets are flying. And you're handed a tin pail and shoved toward the blaze. No orientation, no safety gear, just faith, water, and adrenaline. Welcome to how the West fell apart, one catastrophe at a time. Mainstream historical fact. Fires were among the most feared disasters in Western towns. With wooden buildings, dry conditions, and limited water, a single spark could destroy entire settlements. Towns like Deadwood, Tombstone, and Prescott suffered massive fires in the 19th century. You join a frantic bucket line, passing pails from the well toward the flames. The water steams off the barn side like spit on a griddle. Embers float in the air, landing on your sleeve. You slap it out, coughing. You manage to throw water in the general direction of the flames. Mostly, you soak your own boots. The smoke makes your eyes sting, your lungs burn, and your nose run like it's trying to leave town. The fire is eventually smothered, thanks more to collapsing beams than heroic action. 2 horses are singed but alive. One man's beard is now gone. People cheer, you lie down in the dirt and reevaluate every life decision that brought you here. And that was just Tuesday, because disaster doesn't stop with fire. There's the windstorm that hits 2 nights later. It howls through town like a banshee with a grudge, slamming shutters, flattening fences, and sending a privy tumbling end over end past the church. You try to sleep through it, you fail. The next morning, the saloon roof is gone, just gone. Maybe it moved east, the bartender says, pouring a drink beneath open sky. Fringe tidbit. Western towns occasionally built wooden sidewalks a foot or 2 above the ground, not just to keep shoes clean, but to prevent snake bites. Rattlers like to curl up under porches, waiting for warm toes to dangle. And then there's the illness, not the dramatic kind from movies. No coughing blood into a handkerchief with sad piano music. No, it's diarrhea. You wake up one morning doubled over, your stomach doing gymnastics. You run to the outhouse. You stay there for most of the day, contemplating the meaning of life between dry heaves. You're told it's prairie belly, and you'll live. You're not convinced. Historians still argue whether water contamination or food spoilage was the greater health hazard in frontier settlements. Either way, people were constantly battling things you couldn't see. Bacteria, spoiled meat, infected wounds. all without understanding why they were sick. The local doctor, a man named Fitch, finally checks on you. He pokes your gut once, then declares, "Ah, yes, intestinal rebellion. His prescription? Whiskey, vinegar, and boiled bark. You drink it, you regret it. But somehow, you get better, just in time for the next crisis. Locusts. Yes, locusts. A full biblical swarm. You hear them before you see them, a strange crackling buzz like static on an angry radio. Then the sky darkens. They fall on the fields like a moving, chewing carpet. They eat everything. Crops, cloth, paper, even laundry drying on a line. You try to wave them away. They land in your hair, your ears, your soup. Children scream. Farmers curse. Amos from the wagon leans on a fence and mutters, "End times." Then they're gone. The land is stripped. The aftermath is quiet. Too quiet. You try to help gather what's left. Corn husks, ragged stalks, bent tools, morale. Disaster has a way of bonding people or breaking them. In this case, it does a bit of both. The preacher organizes a town prayer. The saloon organizes a discount. You attend both. Then comes the dust storm. You're inside the stable, brushing a horse, when it hits. A wall of brown that devours the horizon. The wind hurls grit through every crack. You cover your mouth, your eyes, your everything. It still gets in. Breathing feels like inhaling sandpaper. You try to see, to move, to yell. Everything is muffled. You wait it out in the dark with the horse. You talk to the horse. The horse is unimpressed. By nightfall, the storm fades. The town reemerges, shaken, but still standing. Barely. You help sweep out the chapel. Someone finds a chicken in the bell tower. No one knows how it got there. You start to understand something deep and uncomfortable. Out here, life is a series of interruptions. You can't plan, you can't control, you can only react. Everything breaks, everything leaks, everything bites. But the people, they persist. You watch them rebuild the barn, patch the saloon, replant what little they have. They joke, they argue, they keep going. Because what else is there? That night, you sit with Ruth and Amos by the fire. Amos puffs his pipe. Back east, they think it's all gunfights and gold, he says. Truth is, it's floods and flat tires, and sometimes chickens in the roof. Ruth smiles faintly. You get used to it, she says. You nod, not because you're ready, but because you're still here, and that counts for something. You're starting to think you've seen it all. Storms, snakes, stabbings, surprise, dentistry. But nothing quite prepares you for what happens next. A stranger rides into town. He's tall, dust-covered, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that hides his face. His horse is lean and mean-looking, like it's seen more than one bar fight. The whole town pauses to watch. He doesn't speak, just ties up his horse, strolls into the saloon, and orders a sarsaparilla. And just like that, the gossip begins. Who is he? A bounty hunter? An outlaw? A government agent? Maybe just a guy who really likes fizzy root beverages? In the Old West, identity is a fluid thing, and secrets are worth more than gold. You ask the bartender, "Who's that?" He shrugs. Not my business. You ask Ruth. She narrows her eyes. Not from around here. I don't trust anyone who shows up that clean. Clean? The man has a tumbleweed in his beard. But she's right. People don't just appear without someone knowing their backstory. And in this town, Your backstory is your currency. Mainstream historical fact. There were few formal IDs or records in frontier towns. People reinvented themselves constantly. Former criminals became sheriffs and ex-soldiers turned school teachers. With limited communication, your reputation spread by word of mouth, not paper. The stranger stays the night. He plays a quiet game of cards. He doesn't cheat. He doesn't talk much. He wins 3 hands and leaves without collecting his winnings. You stare after him. Amos leans over. Don't get curious, kid. Curiosity out here gets you hanged, or married, sometimes both. Charming. But now the whole town is buzzing. He's got that look, one woman whispers. The look of a man who's buried something. Or someone, another adds. Fringe tidbit. Some people faked entire lives out west. Men pretended to be war heroes. Women posed as widows of noble birth. There's even record of one man who lived 20 years under a false name, then accidentally revealed himself while sleep-talking in a boarding house. By the next day, the stranger's gone. No goodbye, no note, just a few coins left on the bar. But he leaves something behind, a ripple. Because out here, secrets don't die, they spread. And you're beginning to realize everyone in this town is hiding something. There's the quiet widow who speaks French fluently when she thinks no one's listening. The teenage stable boy with a knife scar across his ribs he won't explain. The blacksmith who drinks tea at exactly 4 p.m. and once mentioned working for a duke. Even Ruth. One day, while you're gathering eggs, you find her sitting on the porch, polishing an old rifle. The initials carved into the stock aren't hers. You point. She just says, "Another life," and goes back to polishing. Historians still argue whether the West was truly a land of second chances or just a place where people ran out of first ones. Either way, reinvention was a survival tactic. Out here, the past isn't past. It's just quiet. Until it isn't. 2 days later, a bounty poster arrives by mail. The face almost looks like the stranger. Different hat, less beard, same eyes. $500, alive only. The town buzzes again. No one knows where he went. You wonder, was he running to something or from it? The sheriff folds the poster and says, "Ain't worth chasing ghosts," but it sticks with you because now you're wondering what people see when they look at you. Are you the clueless outsider, the helpless greenhorn, or are you something else now? You've changed. The town changed you. You've lied. You've fought. You've slept under stars and woken up next to chickens. You've buried a tooth and lost a shirt. You've made people laugh, made someone cry, made peace with the outhouse. You've become someone, even if you're still figuring out who. Later that week, you help the school teacher, a kind woman with suspiciously precise handwriting, paint the fence around the schoolhouse. She talks about her past, briefly, mentions a city, a broken engagement, a brother who vanished into Mexico. She pauses, brushes a strand of hair from her face, and says, "Out here, it's easier to start over." You nod. You don't ask more, because the code of the West isn't just ride hard or shoot straight. It's mind your business, unless someone opens the door. And when they do, you listen, because trust is rare. You gain it not by asking, but by being there. The next time a traveler shows up, it's a young woman with blistered feet and a look that says she's carrying 10 pounds of bad memory. Ruth takes her in, no questions. You offer her water, she thanks you, but doesn't say her name. You don't press. You just hand her a piece of bread and sit nearby, because you understand now, out here, everyone's a mystery. Some are tragic, some are dangerous, but most are just trying to outrun who they used to be. And you're finally beginning to understand who you are, not who you were, not who you meant to be, just who you've become. Dusty, scratched, a little bruised, but still here, still standing, still listening. The heat is back with a vengeance, the kind that makes the horizon shimmer and your brain feel like it's been left in a skillet. You squint at the sky and wonder how something so blue can feel so aggressive. Today is not for adventuring, it's not for travel or tragedy. Today is for surviving summer in the Wild West, which, despite what movies would have you believe, isn't all dusty glamour and sweat-drenched heroism. It's mostly stink, thirst, sunburns, and creative hygiene choices. You thought yesterday was hot. Today, the wind itself feels like it's coming off a blacksmith's anvil. Even the flies look tired. You try to sit still. Doesn't help. The sweat still rolls down your back like syrup. Your shirt sticks to you like it has abandonment issues. The wooden floor under your boots radiates heat like a stove top. Ruth hands you a tin cup of water. It's warm, slightly metallic. You drink it like it's the nectar of the gods. Then she slaps a wide-brimmed hat on your head. You're fixing the chicken coop, but it's 100 degrees. She raises an eyebrow. Then work fast. Mainstream historical fact. Summers in the American West were brutally hot, especially in places like Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Texas. With limited shade, no air conditioning, and often poor ventilation in buildings, settlers had to be resourceful just to stay cool and alive. You trudge out to the coop, hammer in hand, mouth dry, sweat dripping down your nose. The chickens glare at you, clearly unhappy with your renovation skills and your odor. You work fast. You work sloppy. You nearly hammer your thumb twice. By the end, the coop's door is fixed, but your soul is melting. You stagger back to the pump and splash water on your face. It instantly evaporates. Someone fans themselves with a flour sack. Someone else just lies in the dirt like a baked potato. And that's the rhythm of summer out here. Slow, sweaty, and slightly surreal. The saloon sells beer that's only slightly cooler than body temperature. The barkeep drops a pebble of ice into your cup and looks at you like you've just been knighted. Ice is luxury. Stored in sawdust, hauled from the mountains, or cut from frozen lakes and shipped in insulated boxes. You savor that single melting cube like it's your last breath of civilization. Fringe tidbit. People in the Old West often used evaporative cooling methods, like hanging wet sheets in doorways or storing perishables in spring houses dug into the ground. Some towns even had ice houses for communal storage, if you were lucky enough to live near one. You're not. That night, the heat doesn't ease. It just changes form. The air feels heavier, the crickets louder. You lie on your cot with no blanket, arms spread like a crime scene, counting beads of sweat on your forehead. You try to sleep. You fail. Everything sticks, the sheets, the pillow, your own thoughts. You get up and sit outside in the dark, fanning yourself with a newspaper. The ink rubs off on your hands. Worth it. A few others sit in silence nearby, just existing. Someone says, "Remember when we had spring?" Someone else sighs. "Barely. It gets weird." You hallucinate an ice cream cone at one point, then you hallucinate a bathtub. Then you hallucinate Ruth telling you to stop hallucinating and go fetch more water. She wasn't hallucinated. You do as you're told. The next day, a heat-crazed cow wanders into town, smashes a bucket, then sits in the middle of Main Street for 5 hours. No one argues. Everyone just walks around it, even the sheriff. "Let her cool down," he mutters, sweating through his badge. You learn new heat survival tricks from the locals. Soak your socks and wear them damp. Put a cold rag on your neck, if you can find anything cold. Sleep on the floor. It's marginally cooler. Don't talk unless absolutely necessary. Conversations raise body temperature, so everyone gets quieter. The days stretch, the work slows. But the strange thing, you adapt. Your body adjusts, sort of. Your mind numbs, kind of. Your expectations lower to a point where lukewarm water becomes thrilling, and amid the misery, small joys bloom. Ruth slices open a watermelon. It's warm, but still sweet. You eat it like it's made of diamonds. Someone plays a harmonica under the shade of a wagon. Children throw dirt clumps and pretend it's snow. You join in. Historians still argue whether people in frontier settlements suffered more from heat stroke or dehydration during peak summers. Records are patchy, but plenty of letters and diaries mention people collapsing in the fields, especially newcomers who hadn't built up the resilience, like you. The preacher holds a prayers for rain meeting. It's half serious, half hysterical. Everyone gathers, fans in hand, sweat stains blooming under arms, begging the skies to have mercy. A cloud appears. People cheer. It disappears. People curse. Eventually, it does rain. Not a lot, not long, but enough. You stand in it, face up, arms open, soaking through, laughing like a lunatic. No one judges. Everyone joins. The dust settles. The air cools. For maybe an hour, everything feels possible again. Then the mosquitoes arrive, like a biblical punishment. You spend the night slapping, swatting, swearing under your breath. In the morning, you look like a pox survivor. And yet, you smile, because the worst of the heat has passed. For now, you survived it. And you didn't even cry in public. Much. You're learning, little by little, that the Wild West doesn't care about your comfort. But it does reward your stubbornness. And you're getting good at being stubborn, even if your socks still smell like despair. You're starting to think you might be getting the hang of this whole frontier life thing. Sure, your skin is sun-cracked, your boots are more whole than leather, and your accent still makes people snort when you say sarsaparilla. But somehow, you've earned a bit of respect. You've patched roofs, herded cattle, survived both food poisoning and a goat stampede. You've been sneezed on by a mule and hit in the face with a tumbleweed. And yet, here you are. But now comes a different kind of challenge, one that no bucket, shovel, or strong stomach can help with. You're about to experience Western justice. And spoiler alert, it's not going to feel fair. It all starts when someone's horse goes missing. It's a prized one. Black coat, white socks, fast enough to outrun trouble, and handsome enough to cause it. Its owner, a wiry rancher named Cowboy, storms through town like a dust storm in human form. "Stolen!" he roars, "right out from under my barn roof." The town gathers. Whispers swirl, fingers point, and then Someone mentions seeing a stranger near the south pasture yesterday. You weren't even in the south pasture yesterday. You were in the creek, fishing a soggy boot out of your own laundry. But guess what? You matched the stranger's description. Tall, dusty, new face. Didn't wave at Mrs. Cartwright when she nodded at you last Sunday. Now you're suspicious. You try to laugh it off. Bad idea. In a small town, humor is suspicious too. Soon enough, you find yourself standing in front of the sheriff, who's got one eye on the poster board, one hand on his coffee, and absolutely no interest in due process. "Where were you yesterday afternoon?" he asks, chewing slowly. You explain in detail. He nods, then shrugs. Could be true, could not. You stare. "Isn't there like a trial?" He chuckles. "We call this the trial. Mainstream historical fact. Justice in frontier towns was swift, informal, and often arbitrary. Many areas lacked judges, lawyers, or jails. Justice was delivered by sheriffs, posses, or in worse cases, mobs. The famous Judge Roy Bean literally held court in a saloon. Luckily, Ruth steps in. "She's with me," she says, voice sharp enough to shave a boot heel. That stops things. For now. But you felt the shift, the eyes, the murmur, the fragile balance of belonging teetering with one whispered accusation. This isn't like a movie court scene with soaring speeches and dramatic objections. This is real, rough Western justice, where reputation is evidence and timing is a defense. Historians still argue whether the rapid, improvised justice of the Old West kept order or sowed chaos. One thing's clear. Frontier law was a patchwork quilt of fear, vengeance, and whoever spoke loudest. Even when things calmed down, Calloway's horse returned the next day, covered in burrs and looking sheepish. People still give you a wide berth for a while. "Could have been you," one man says, sipping from a tin mug. "Wasn't, but could have. That's all it takes. You learn to keep your head down, to speak softly, to never touch another person's saddle, even just to move it. You also learn that sometimes the law is personal. Later that week, two ranch hands get into a brawl over a fence post. One pulls a knife. The other bleeds. No arrest. "Boys will be boys," says the sheriff. You ask Ruth, "What's the rule?" She says, "Depends who you ask. The preacher says justice should be blind. The bartender says it should be drunk. Amos says it only works if it's fast and painful. The town holds a peace circle, basically a potluck where no one stabs anyone and people try not to glare. You bring beans, no one eats them, but things ease slowly. Because time, it turns out, is the real sheriff. And eventually, people forget why they were mad, or just get distracted by the next crisis. Mrs. Cartwright's runaway goat, or a teenage prank involving tar in the bell tower. Still, the lesson burns in your gut. This isn't a place of fairness. It's a place of balance. Reputation keeps you safe. Respect keeps you upright. Relationships keep you out of the dirt. And now, you guard those carefully. You make amends, quietly. You help fix a fence, share water, tip your hat more often. You even wave at Mrs. Cartwright twice. She squints, nods, maybe forgives you. Justice in the West doesn't always wear a badge or swing a gavel. Sometimes it looks like a quiet apology, or a plate of biscuits, or simply not being run out of town on a rail. You're learning the code. Don't steal. Don't lie. Too much. Don't touch another person's hat unless invited. Don't assume anything can't be taken from you with a rope and a vote. And if you are accused of something, have someone like Ruth on your side. Otherwise, you're out of luck, partner. You wake up to bells. Not the panic bell, thank goodness. Not fire, not locusts, not runaway cows. These are church bells, steady, hopeful, maybe even cheerful, if you squint hard enough and ignore your hangover from last night's half-fermented apple cider tasting competition. Today's different. There's buzz in the air. People are baking things, dressing up, sweeping porches like they expect company. Ruth's in a clean dress. Amos trimmed his beard. The town has come alive in a way that almost feels festive. It's the annual town day, a mix of celebration, barter fair, talent show, and mild emotional breakdowns held under bunting and swatting flies. You wander outside, blinking in the sunlight, and someone hands you a biscuit. It's still warm. For a second you think, maybe this is what civilization feels like. Then someone drops a pie. A dog immediately face plants into it. A child cries. Yep, still the West. But there's music. There's food. And for the first time since you arrived, there's laughter without edge. Mainstream historical fact. Despite hardship, frontier communities regularly organize town fairs, dances, and shared meals. These events were crucial for morale, courtship, political organizing, and even arranging mutual aid. Because out here, you couldn't survive entirely alone. You spend the morning helping set up a makeshift stage using crates, planks, and 2 barrels that smell faintly of molasses and regret. There's a 3-person choir, a fiddle solo, and a man who claims he can hypnotize chickens. He cannot. It's chaos. You cheer anyway. Then comes the barter circle. You trade a hand-sewn pouch for a tin of peppermint candy. Someone offers you a goat. You politely decline. By midday, you're sitting in the shade with Amos, sipping lemonade, watching children chase each other with wooden swords and bad intentions. He nods toward them. That's the future of this town. You smirk. Unsupervised, violent, and sticky? He chuckles. Exactly. But there's something underneath his tone, something softer. This place, dusty, ragged, hot, unpredictable, it's become home to these people, and somehow, in your own blundering, blister-covered way, to you too. You wander to the chapel, where Ruth is arranging flowers. Big day, you say. She nods. We've earned it. You ask how many years she's been here. Too many, she says. Not enough. And that's how it feels. Because time out here doesn't move in smooth lines. It stretches and collapses. It's one long string of moments, some searing, some tender, all layered with dust and stubbornness. In the afternoon, you help bury a time capsule behind the schoolhouse, full of letters, keepsakes, a worn boot, and a small bottle labeled Hope. You slip in a drawing you made one quiet evening. The town's skyline under a western moon. No one says anything, but Ruth smiles. As the sun begins to dip, the dance begins. There's a lantern-lit barn, a half-tuned fiddle, a woman calling square steps with authority. You dance. Badly. Again. This time, no one laughs. They just pull you along. And in this strange, tender whirl of arms and dust and music, you realize something. You made it, not gracefully, not heroically, but fully. You survived the Wild West, its heat, its violence, its chaos, its justice, its dust, its hunger, its humor, and its heartbreak. You came here soft and hopeful. You're leaving. Well, you're not leaving. You're staying. Because this place, this people, this hard-earned, raw-edged little town, it's yours now. Fringe tidbit. Some settlers who came west with the intention of making a quick fortune never left, even when gold ran out or land was barren. What they found wasn't wealth. It was belonging, a strange, shared identity forged in dust and struggle. You sit by the fire that night, full of stew and exhaustion, watching sparks drift into the stars. The town quiets. The crickets take over. Someone hums softly on a porch. You close your eyes. You hear a coyote howl. You hear someone snore. You hear the gentle creak of the windmill, turning like the world always has, always will. You made it. But more than that, you understand it now. This land doesn't want heroes. It doesn't want cowboys with perfect teeth and dramatic exits. It wants humans. Resilient, foolish, sweaty, scarred humans. Like you. Always changing. Always choosing. Always waking up the next day and doing it all again. Because out here, survival isn't a single act. It's a practice. And you, dear listener, have learned it the hard way. And the right way. So now, as the dust settles on your boots and the fire dwindles to glowing coals, let the weight of this journey finally lift from your shoulders. Breathe in the quiet, deep and slow. Let it fill you like a warm wind curling over prairie grass. Feel the day fade, not with finality, but with peace. Because that's how it happens out here. Not in grand endings, but in the hush that follows hard work and the stillness that comes after storms. The sounds of the town drift off one by one. The last footstep, the swing of a shutter, the creak of wood settling into sleep. Even the stars blink slower now. You've walked through fire and flood, chased by dust and doubt, met ghosts in the mirror and strangers in the saloon, and each one, each hard-won moment, shaped you, not into a hero, but into someone real. And maybe that's the whole truth of the West. It didn't need perfect people, just willing ones. So, as your eyes grow heavy and your heartbeat finds its nighttime rhythm, remember, you were willing. You stayed. You learned. You lived. And now you rest under a velvet sky, among strangers who became kin, in a town that's not perfect, but just enough. Good night, pioneer. You made it. Sleep well.